O Muhammad, say Ameen. The Prophet said, as I took the first step, Jibril said, رُغِمَ عَنْفُ رَجُلٍ أَدْرَكَ رَمَضَانَ وَلَمْ تُكَفَّرْ عَنْهُ سَيِّئَاتُهُ. May such a person be wretched, he who has the opportunity of witnessing the month of Ramadan. Ramadan is just around the corner. And Allah does not forgive all of his sins. Such a person has wasted Ramadan. The Prophet said, I said, Ameen. When I took the second step, Jibril said, رُغِمَ عَنْفُ رَجُلٍ أَدْرَكَ وَالِدَيْهِ وَلَمْ يُدْخِلْهُ الْجَنَّةَ. May such a person become wretched, he who has the opportunity of meeting his two parents alive, and he did not see that as an opportunity to enter paradise. The Prophet said, Ameen. And he said, when I took the third step, Jibril said, رُغِمَ عَنْفُ رَجُلٍ ذُكِرْتَ عِنْدَهُ وَلَمْ يُصَلِّ عَلَيْهِ. May such a person be wretched, in whose presence my name is mentioned, and does not say sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Well, I'm very happy to be here with you, and I shall, in the next 30 minutes, be reflecting on the topic you've given me, which is fragmented world, building bridges for global solidarity and sustainable peace. Sincerely, when I was informed about this program, I thought I was coming to meet experts in international relations and global policy and strategic studies. It did not occur to me that I was meeting students, which makes it better because students are really the torch bearers of the future. And we shall be talking about a fragmented world, which is susceptible to a lot of approaches. Because even within the home of Islam, globally and nationally, we are fragmented. Within Islam, and this one is trans-religious. It goes beyond Islam. When you're talking about the global picture, you're talking about the world. And we live today in a world of profound diversity. And I shall be narrowing this discussion down to the teachings of Sufism, the Sufi perspectives of this discourse. Why do I say this? No, it's not just because this is a Sufi gathering. It is because I've always believed that Sufism, the Tasawwuf, if practiced the way it should be practiced, should have a solution to all the problems humanity is facing. Because the most important teachings, the most important traits of survival are to be found among Sufis. It is unfortunate, however, and you all know, you are all living witnesses to the fact that we have not been true Sufis in Nigeria. We have not been true Sufis in Nigeria. Just as we have not been true Muslims anyway. Because there is nothing called Tasawwuf, there is nothing called Sufism without pure and pristine Islam. So what do we experience today? We have internal fragmentation within Islam, and in the larger human community, we discover that the fragmentation is even deeper. We have, as human beings, turned this world into a theater of savagery. And what we see is that the lowest qualities of man are brought to the fore on a daily basis via the conventional media and, of course, the social media. Central to the challenge humanity is facing today are the actions of the so-called superpowers that have turned our planet into an amphitheater of the lowest qualities of human beings. The animalistic traits in us, our bestiality, is being paraded courtesy of the actions of the so-called superpowers. And these are states that are blessed with overwhelmingly superior military and economic capabilities and extensive global influence, be it political, diplomatic, cultural, technological, or strategic, such that no major international issue can be resolved without their involvement. Distinguished from major forces or major powers, there is a difference between the superpowers and the major powers. So you're talking about the major powers, you're talking about the traditional powers like France, like the UK. And when you're talking about the superpowers, you're talking about US and Russia, US and the USSR during the Cold War. Today, we no longer live in a bipolar world. This world is gradually shifting towards a unipolar world. A unipolar world not championed by the US but by China, because China is fast emerging as the mega power of the world. Global politics is increasingly characterized by rivalry, mistrust, arms race, power plots, and struggles for regional and global dominance. These dynamics have fueled conflicts across regions, from Eastern Europe, Russia, Ukraine war, the Middle East, Israel, Palestine, Iran, to East Africa, to East Asia, China, Taiwan tensions, and North Korea. Rising nationalism, trade wars, weakening multilateral institutions, and advances in military technology have further deepened instability. According to the Global Peace Index of 2025, just last year, global peacefulness is at its lowest ebb since World War II. And with 59 active state-based conflicts, currently we have 59 nations having state-sponsored violence and increased militarization. This is what we are going through now. It is, though some are dominant, but as at the moment, as of last year, as of 2025, and the situation has not changed, we have 59 nations actively involved in one form of war or another. So the conflicts are becoming more complex, fragmented, and humanitarian in impact, because it's affecting not only warring factions, not only the military, not only armed people, but innocent women, children, old men and women are being destroyed on a daily basis. And in the middle of this threat, prominent global leaders, analysts, and religious leaders have continued to warn that the world may already be experiencing the early stage of a third world war. We shouldn't fool ourselves. The third world war is just around the corner. Some analysts will tell you that it has started already, because it is going to be in the area of ideas. It is going to be, because we have built enough weapons to destroy the world. For example, the VH-nap gas requires only 20 tons to destroy the whole world. US alone has 110 tons. China has 400 tons. And we need only 20 tons to destroy the world. So we have built enough weapons to destroy the world several times over. We have built enough to destroy this plane of existence several times over. So what are we talking about? Here we cry about petty things, we complain about the baby suffering we are experiencing. And in reality, the bigger things are coming. However, those of us in Africa may not really experience most of the things. If Africans are going to suffer, we're going to suffer hunger. Because we've not been self-sufficient, we've not been taking care of ourselves, we've not been able to make a good use of the gift nature has given us. But those who are going to feel, and that I don't want to scare those of you who are still planning to Japan. But I'm going to tell you, if World War III is going to, if it's going to degenerate into full escalation of armed conflict, it's going to be in the Western world. It's going to be in the Western world and some parts of Asia. Africa will only feel the heat because there is no superpower that has a station at the moment, a military station in Africa. They have tried, the US wanted to try it in Nigeria. They have been trying to, even France wanted to use Burkina Faso. Luckily, they got a right-thinking person who took over the government there. So they've been trying to penetrate Africa so that as at the time they think, of course, it's going to be devastated everywhere. So the Africa will not be devastated physically, but existentially we're going to be challenged because we have not learned to be self-sufficient. Africa alone can feed the whole world, but we have been so lazy that we have ignored the gift of nature. Most of the things they use to build all of this, the uranium they use, are extracted from Africa. These things are extracted from here. So the world is at the brink of collapse. Compounding these dangers is a weakened and divided United Nations, particularly a paralyzed Security Council constrained by great power rivalries and veto politics. As acknowledged by United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres in 2023, this dysfunction has severely undermined the UN's credibility and effectiveness in responding to the crisis in Ukraine, the one in Gaza, the one in Myanmar, and beyond, leaving the international system increasingly vulnerable to unchecked escalation. Allah says in the Quran, ظهر الفساد في البر والبحر بما كسبت أيدي الناس. Corruption has appeared on land and sea because of what people have done with their hands. Because of what we have done with our hands. So these things are happening. So when you talk about the United Nations, I often ask, how united are these nations? How united are the nations? United Nations, African Union, are we really united in any way? Because our brains are still being toyed with by the so-called superpower. So this lecture argues that these crises reflect a global fragmentation of meaning, identity, and moral responsibility. While diplomacy, security arrangements, and institutional reforms are indispensable, they remain insufficient without ethical and spiritual renewal, drawing on Quranic guidance and classical Sufi wisdom. The lecture advances a holistic vision of peace grounded in its inner transformation, justice, compassion, and shared human dignity. Understanding the roots of global fragmentation, national and racial arrogance in perspective. The Western concept of nationhood and national identity is a product of several centuries of strife, wars, conquest, enslavement, treaties, and violations of personal and institutional dignities. This solid past left an indelible mark on the psyche of the Western man, as a result of which he has come to cherish individualism and freedom. These two concepts brought together and translated into political will have given birth to protection of one's territory, respect for human rights, and the doctrine of survival of the fittest. National identity, therefore, is the identity of the citizens of a country, defined by their historical and cultural traditions, moral values, ideals, beliefs, national sovereignty, and this manifests in how individuals or groups believe that they belong to a country as a political community. Issues of nationhood and national identity are often major factors in much of the contemporary world's conflicts. Every man claims to belong to one nation or another. He therefore sees the support for the nation and his derision of others as patriotism. National consciousness in most of the Western societies is therefore seen as an exclusivist sentiment for the promotion of self-love. Islam, however, maintains that man must see himself as a member of a global family. His national or tribal affiliations are only for social identification and do not confer on him any status of superiority. Allah says, Ya ayyuhan nas, inna khalaqnakum min dhakarin wa untha, وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم. O mankind, we have created you from a single male and female, and we have made you into tribes and sub-tribes, into tribes and nations. لتعارفوا, that you may identify one another. إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم. The most noble, the most honorable among you is the God conscious. One of the major challenges to peace in the world is racial and national arrogance. That's why the economic factors, the First and Second World Wars, had their roots in the feeling of superiority by some nations of the world. When a nation looks down on other nations, it falls into the habits of totalitarianism and perpetrates atrocities against them and seeks legitimacy in its own superiority complex. Such a nation thus becomes a victim of its own insensitivities, as its peace and security are continually threatened by the victims of its tyranny. A very simple example was the 9/11 saga. I remember very well I was in the Institute of Journalism in 1991 when Operation Desert Storm occurred. In 1991, Iraq invaded Kuwait. In fact, precisely on the 2nd of August 1991, Iraq invaded Kuwait. And it was during that war that President George Bush of US came out to say that, in fact, the day was September 11, 1991. September 11, 1991, he said US will no longer be drawn back by the saga of Hiroshima and Nagasaki during the Second World War, that US had become the policeman of the world. So it was not strange that exactly 10 years later, on the same day he made that declaration, that utterance, on the 10th anniversary of that declaration, somebody or a group of people attacked the US. So it is when a nation feels we are better than the others, when a nation feels we are greater than others, and as a result, all others are answerable to us, and we're not answerable to anybody. This is what happens. Such a nation will become the victim of the, piled up anti-oppression sentiments of people. And this is exactly what happened in 9/11. And it is not because the Americans are just thinking, they are programmed to think like that. The average American youth was trained to see non-Americans as non-entities. And this was exactly something that it had been there for a very long time. One of the addressing as far back as 1890, J.J. Ingalls, one of the politicians of the time, addressed the American Senate and said, "The race to which we belong is the most arrogant and rapacious, the most exclusive and indomitable in history. It is the conquering race, an unconquerable race, through which alone man has taken possession of the physical and moral world. All other races have been its enemies or its victims." Similarly, Thomas Jefferson, who wrote the American Declaration of Independence in 1776, and whose writings have had the greatest influence on several generations of American policymakers, declared, "I advance it, therefore, as a suspicion only, that the blacks, whether originally a distinct race or made distinct by time and circumstances, are inferior to the whites in the endowment both of body and mind. A mindset like this will no doubt breed hatred in the minds of the black and racial arrogance in the minds of the white And that's why you still see till today the KKK, the KKK, the white supremacists in the US still struggle to oppress black men wherever they find them. I had an experience during my football research at the Michigan State University in the US in 2007. One of my colleagues, a fellow lecturer in the Michigan State University, was shot. And you know what happened? The guy who shot him had only one crazy notion. What he told the court was that the guy was driving when he shot him, and he had never seen a black man dying behind the wheels. And he wanted to see what it would look like if a black man were to be shot while driving. So he shot him. So why America is very good when it comes to issues of personal freedom, you will discover that racism is still very much alive in so many things we do. Racism is still very much alive. While, that is state-based. In some states, you see people of color, black, yellow, the Mexicans, the Chinese, the Japanese, the Pakistanis, the Indians, the black people thrive in some states. And in some, particularly the states dominated by the Republicans, you see that racism is very, very much alive. So people look down on you, they see, the moment I was talking with someone and he had, the man had already concluded that I was an American. He had concluded he's a black and he can't be anything. So I talked to him and I said a lot of things, he did not respond. So on the day I wanted to leave the US, because he was my neighbor, I just went to him. Well, I've been trying to engage you all this while. You never responded. But I just want to tell you now, I'm going back to Nigeria. He was shocked and said, so, ain't you an American? I said, no, I'm not an American. He never bothered to listen. And he thought, because he never expected an American, that's why the fact that he knew that there were so many American professors in the university, black professors, he still said he never expected an American black to be a Fulbright fellow. Because the place we were, the apartment was for Fulbright fellow. If you look at it, if you win a Fulbright fellowship, it means you have gone through a rigorous selection process. And he never believed a black man. What kind of reasoning in that? Is that we have a lot of Americans, black Americans, who have obtained the pinnacle of their professions. But because these people only incline towards single stories, he forms an image of you in his mind, and that's what he uses to engage you, to judge you, and he just closes your file like that. So racism is still very much alive in those societies. So Peggy Levitt, in 2007, I met her. She's an American sociologist. She wrote one insightful book called God Needs No Passports. That's the title of the book, God Needs No Passports. And she argued that today, if the world must have peace, we should start thinking of he called it transnational living. We should start thinking about transnational living. Gone are those days when you think, okay, why are they coming to our countries now? And funny enough, the notion of transnational living experience had been established in the Quran over 14 centuries ago. Allah says in Quran chapter 4, verse 97, Allah says, verily, those whom the angels killed, those whom the angels caused to die, while they were logging their own souls, it will be said to them, what were you after? They will reply, we were oppressed in the land. They will say, أَلَمْ تَكُنْ أَرْضُ اللَّهِ وَاسِعَةً فَتُهَاجِرُوا فِيهَا. Is Allah's earth not big enough for you to migrate? Allah himself has recommended that if you are suffering in one corner or if you find yourself in Nigeria and you think you're not making progress, it is better for you to travel. Allah says, on the day of judgment, the angels will have you and will ask you, أَلَمْ تَكُنْ أَرْضُ اللَّهِ وَاسِعَةً فَتُهَاجِرُوا فِيهَا. Is Allah's earth not big enough for you to migrate there? Why should you stay somewhere and suffer? And you not tell Allah, I was not able to worship you because they were oppressing me in Nigeria. If you didn't have the opportunity in Nigeria, for God's sake, go to another part of the world. That is not an excuse. So transnational living has been legislated in the Quran for over 14th century. Just in 2007, it was a major recommendation by American sociologists to the American people that we should be ready for transnational. More and more people will migrate into the American public space. Now, what is the only way out? Just an equitable relationship among nations. Justice and peace are two sides of a coin. The absence of one determines the absence of the other. Several of the crises that have challenged global security have their roots in the injustice done by some nations against other nations. The ugly episode of colonialism indeed left a bitter taste in the mouths of Africans, Asians, and all those corners of the world where it was perpetrated. The Western powers, that's why the lip service they pay to justice, do not seem to know its meaning or are determined to turn a blind eye to it. Nothing threatens the peace of the world today other than the fruit of the seeds of injustice that have been planted in different lands and tribes. Apart from dismembering the Ottoman Empire and carving out Kuwait from Iraq, because Kuwait was initially a part of Iraq. It was during the Saheed Treaty in May 16, 1916. The trio of Britain, France, and US also created an international consortium to exploit the oil of Iraq and its environs that they joined at the conference, what called the Conference of Remo, the San Remo Conference of April 24, 1920. It was during this conference that they gave the mandate of administering Palestine to Britain. You see, people belonging to other nations like Nigeria and Ghana deciding what is going to happen in the Republic. It was at that San Remo Conference of 1924 that US, France, and Britain came together to award the administration of Palestine to Britain. They said, okay, Britain, you will be taking care of these people on our behalf. And why did they do that? For economic reasons. They wanted to sit over the oil of Iraq because they discovered that Iraq had a very large deposit of oil. According to Ralph Scoman, in his monograph, Iraq and Kuwait, a history suppressed, he said 95% of the shares of that Iraqi oil consortium were divided among three countries. Britain took 47.5%, France 23.5%, and the US 23.75%. The consortium of San Remo became Iraq Petroleum Company. Where on earth is justice? 95% was shared by other nations, and 5% was retained for the people of Iraq, who owned the land, who owned the space where the oil was discovered. And it was not discovered by these people, it was discovered by the Iraqis under the Ottoman dynasty. So what they did is they first destroyed the Ottoman dynasty, so that they will have access to Iraq. And that's exactly what happened in Saudi Arabia too. Before 1924, there was nothing called Saudi Arabia. You only had Hijaz. It was that unholy alliance between the Ibn Saud family and the British government that gave birth to what you have today. So they decided to name a whole nation with the name of a family because the family assisted them in destroying the last Islamic empire. The Icad'-headed Israeli-Palestinian crisis has already entered its fourth century because the crisis historically began in 1917 with the Balfour Declaration of November 1917. It was Lord Balfour who was the British Foreign Secretary in Iraq and in the Middle East at that time. So he was the one holding forth for the British government in Palestine. He wrote, what is the content of the Balfour Declaration? The content is very simple. His Majesty's government views with favor the establishment of a homeland for the Jews in Palestine. Any student of international politics should know that the Balfour Declaration holds no mandatory force. In international relations, it does not hold a mandatory force, but yet they effected it because they were all interested in it. And this is why Lord Grey, who succeeded Lord Balfour, addressed the House of Lords in London, because when he discovered that they were already talking about driving the Palestinians out of their natural, of their homeland, he said, let me quote it verbatim, he said, a Zionist home, my Lord, means a Zionist government over a period where 93% of the people are Arabs. I do not see how you can establish other than an Arab government without prejudice to the rights and aspirations of these people. But by 1923, it was clear, and Lord Curzon, who took over from Lord Balfour, said the four great powers are committed to Zionism. Zionism, you should have reminded me about Zionism, be it right or wrong, good or bad, is still rooted in age-long traditions of far profounder imports than the aspirations of the Arabs that currently live in that territory. So from day one, they knew what they wanted to do. And that's why Apostle said that the Balfour Declaration is a document in which one nation promises to another nation the country of the third nation. So if you have problems as complex as this, what do you do? If you have problems as complex as this, what do we do? We start building bridges of global solidarity and sustainable peace. So what is the Sufi perspectives? The traditional Sufi attitude to all human challenges as a move and operate in harmony. They should relate with one another in harmony. So whatever your other identity, there is a primary identity, and that primary identity is the Tawidic identity. We all acknowledge the fact that we come from the same source. We decided to become Muslims, Christians, idolaters, Buddhists, or whatever, what have you, on this plane of existence. But we have a common identity, and that common identity is tied to the oneness of Allah. So there is the oneness of humanity. Well, in Tasawwuf, we have a very clear picture of this. In fact, I implore you to, if Timsan could raise a committee, the Jawahir Rasail of Sheikh Ibrahim Yasir Kaulaki, if you can get people to translate it into English or at least review it. It contains a lot of ingredients for global peace, for social harmony, and for social cohesion. The Christians used to say that Jesus Christ salam said in the Bible, I have yet many things to say unto you, but ye cannot bear them now. Subhanahu wa ta'ala.
I think we can do better. You can do better. You can do better. Please continue. Continue, please. Continue, please. Continue, please. Please, you can have your seat now.